I enjoyed staying on the studio until it was about 1 a.m. Eastern time on the night of the Alberta election. Of course, the Alberta election was on Mountain Time, so I was a little bit pooped, but I had to go early, and it was a very interesting night. It was a night of relief for me because I was genuinely worried that the Socialist NDP had a real chance of winning. In fact, there was a while there where the NDP seemed to be ahead in the polls, even incredibly in Calgary. That seemed to stop when Danielle Smith had a great debate performance and Rachel Notley was uncharacteristically wobbly. And even strange things like wearing conservative blue. I'm not sure why Notley did that. I'm not saying that was an important or decisive moment, but I think the NDP didn't really know what they were doing in the debate, whereas Danielle Smith knew exactly what she was doing, stopped the bleeding of votes, built up confidence, and went on to win. I looked at the stats afterwards, and I know it's been a week, but forgive me. Danielle Smith was only down 2% and change from where Jason Kenney was in his huge unifying victory in 2019. Let me say that again. 2019, Jason Kenney comes back, unites the Wild Rose Party and the Conservative Party into one. He comes from Stephen Harper's administration. He's a very popular guy. And the NDP were atrocious for 4 years, brought in the carbon tax, almost destroyed the province. Kenney has a great success. Well, here we are 4 years later, and Danielle Smith was just a touch, just a fraction below that, despite the most abusive war room style, unfair critiques and propaganda I've ever seen by the CBC in Alberta. It was astonishing. The reason why the seat count fell, however, is that anyone who didn't vote for the Conservatives coalesced around the NDP. There used to be sort of a vanity party in Alberta called the Alberta Party that, if I recall, got about 9% in the last election. It got less than 1%. The Liberal Party of Alberta, seriously, Justin Trudeau's party, provincially, got less than 1%. The Green Party, less than 1%. The Independence parties, less than 1%. What I'm saying is, if you weren't for Danielle Smith, you were only for Rachel Notley's Socialists. So it wasn't so much that Danielle Smith's support fell, but rather that Rachel Notley sopped up the anybody but Conservative ABC vote. Alas, it was not enough for the Socialists. Danielle Smith won. But a question immediately poses, and I'll bring in our next guest in a moment to talk about it. Would Jason Kenney have won had he remained as premier? And I mentioned that not just because it's an interesting academic exercise in alternative history, but because there was a moment there where I truly believe Jason Kenney was no longer a conservative. He was destroying the values that conservatives believe in: property rights, individual choice, freedom of religion, freedom of association, all the things that the lockdowns and the forced vaccines were taking away from us. But many people in the Conservative Party said, Ezra, you and Rebel News are going to re-elect Rachel Notley. You're going to destroy Jason Kenney. Sure, he's not great these days, but he's better than Rachel Notley. You're wounding him by criticizing him. Just shut up. Get with Team Blue. Be an old loyalist. As you may know, 30 years ago, I was active in the Conservative Party. Join the team, or you are strengthening Rachel Notley. But alas, we could not hold our tongue because we're not partisans. We had to speak truth to power. Jason Kenney was defenestrated. I love that word. It means thrown out the window. He was defenestrated by his own party. Danielle Smith came in, and boy, it looked wobbly for a bit there, but alas, she won.
Well, to paraphrase our dear friend Ralph Klein, welcome to another miracle on the prairies.
I got some poll numbers to show you, but first let's introduce our guest who really knows what's going on. She's our Alberta Bureau Chief, our Chief Reporter in General, and my good friend Sheila Gunn Reid. Sheila, great to see you.
Thanks for having me on the show, boss.
Oh, come on. It's my pleasure. And thanks for doing the great work that you do. I was nervous there about a week out from the election because I was worried that my Conservative Party critics were right. They're saying, Ezra, you and Rebel News criticized Jason Kenney so hard you knocked him out of the game. And now look at you. You went ahead and elected Rachel Notley. How is that better? Economically, civil, libertarian. Well, how is that better? And I thought, oh, brother, maybe they were right. But didn't turn out that way.
No, and I think Jason Kenney would have been the person who reelected Rachel Notley. And part of that has to do with Jason Kenney hanging on as long as he did before going to a leadership review, when it was becoming increasingly clear that he was wildly unpopular with the grassroots within the party. And he sort of ragged the puck on that leadership review, which left Danielle Smith with really not very much runway for people to get to know her. And if people had gotten to know her and she was able to implement some policies that didn't cause the sky to fall the way the media and the NDP said that they would, she would have that little bit of cushion where she wasn't this unknown quantity for a lot of people who are new to Alberta or skeptical of her past floor crossing or some of her, more wilder musings while she was on radio. Jason Kenney didn't leave her that cushion. And so she basically became premier, had a little bit of time to get out of the pandemic and go straight to re-election. So I think if there were some sort of catastrophe a week ago, the blame probably would have rested squarely on Jason Kenney's shoulders.
Yeah, and of course, our job is to speak honestly and give our opinions. That's our role. It's our role to report the facts, give our honest opinions, express our values, and give our viewers the other side of the story. I mean, my God, if all they consumed was the CBC, they'd be full of Trudeaupian propaganda. So it wouldn't be, quote, our fault anyways. We're not candidates. I'm not even a voter out there. I'm out here in the big smoke these days. But you're so right. The events that happened were caused by the actors. In the main case, Jason Kenney. We are observers, and we're not going to be blind to what the actors are doing. Jason Kenney was acting a lot like Justin Trudeau. But you know what? We've got some proof of it. And Sheila, this is what I want to talk about, because in my bones, I think Jason Kenney would have lost because he wouldn't have picked up any voters in Edmonton. That would have gone all NDP. I think he would have held most of the rural parts, if not all. But I think there were ridings in Calgary that people were just a lot of people. I think a lot of true blue conservatives and Christian conservatives and leave me alone privacy conservative libertarians, just they would not stomach voting for him. But here's a study by a company called Research Co. And their pollster, Mario Canseco, he's been polling for decades, and I think he's pretty good, and I think he's pretty fair-minded. I think he's based in Vancouver, so maybe he doesn't have a lot of personal knowledge about Alberta, and there's one way that shows here. But he published his poll, and he asked conservative voters, would you have voted for Jason Kenney had he been the leader? And the number plunges, especially in Calgary and most pointedly in the rural parts. They hated him, Sheila. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, and I'm just going to spit this on that. I'd love your reaction. You take 30% off the conservative vote in some really rock-ribbed right-wing ridings in rural Alberta, you're still going to win for the UCP. They will never vote for NDP, just never. But if you look in Calgary, which was sort of iffy, if there were about 5 or 6 ridings in Calgary and 1 in Lethbridge, that Danielle Smith won by just a few percent. If you look at the closest ridings in Calgary and Lethbridge, I take Mario Canseco's poll and you chop 5-10% off the UCP vote because people are so mad at Jason Kenney, all of a sudden, there is no majority for the UCP. And remember, there's one independent candidate now. It would at best be a tie and more likely a Notley win. Mario Canseco's poll, asking the question, would you still support Kenney had he run, proves that pragmatically it was the right thing to get rid of him. I've always said morally it was, but even pragmatically it was. Danielle Smith saved Alberta from Rachel Notley, to whom Jason Kenney was going to hand the government. That's my assessment.
Yeah, Jason Kenney did 2 things in his time here in Alberta provincial politics. First, he united the right. Thank you, good job. But then he united the left around Rachel Notley. In Alberta, the progressive vote coalesces around Rachel Notley in the way that the progressive vote coalesces around Justin Trudeau federally. So it is really a two-party system here, much the same as it is federally, even though they don't want to admit it. So Jason Kenney did that. But to prove your point, you look at what happened to a cabinet minister named Tyler Shandro in Calgary, Acadia, which is generally a conservative stronghold.
Yeah.
He's a cabinet minister, or he was a cabinet minister. He was the chief locker downer under Jason Kenney. He lost his seat in a recount now that has added to the NDP cushion. I think it was 7 or 9 votes initially. Now it's 25 votes. The riding has been handed to the NDP. Shandro has been amazing on gun rights in the last 4 months, 5 months. That's Danielle Smith trying to save his butt because she gave him a file that she knows conservatives believe in. It's a red meat conservative issue, and everybody will support him on that issue. But 25 conservatives could not stomach casting a vote for him, and he lost his seat because he was a locker downer hypocrite.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.